Obviously, we have a remit in relation to value for money and ensuring adequate expenditure in terms of the public monies that have been allocated to your organisation. So that goes beyond, I suppose, there's the general checks and balance. It also, as Deputy Murphy has just alluded to, also has to be formed in relation to the time length of investigations and the results following on from that. And I don't think you can do that without, I suppose, reflecting on some of your previous investigations. And the one that I'm a little bit familiar with is in relation to the GSOC investigations subsequent to the death of Shane O'Farrell. There were two different investigations, if I understand it. Could you explain to me what the distinction was in terms of how those two investigations operated?
I'm not exactly sure what you're aware of, Deputy, but my understanding is that there were a number of allegations made at the start, and they were being dealt with slightly differently. And at that point, GSOC brought them all into one umbrella and conducted a criminal investigation in relation to 56 separate allegations that had been made. Those 56 allegations were investigated, and there's determination made then that there was no case of criminality. There was then a discipline investigation, which my colleague Commissioner Logan has alleged to. That is the process that we currently have to go through, where we then have to reset and start again and commence looking at discipline potential matters. That discipline investigation examined 13 separate allegations, and those allegations were examined, and a recommendation was sent to the Garda Commissioner, who I believe took some action in relation to that. Okay, so the first is, if I'm correct, so the criminal investigation, is that the section 101? That ends in a 101 report, it's called, which is a report that comes to the Commission following a criminal investigation. And the disciplinary is the section 97? That's correct. Okay. Definitely. So what was the instigation of those investigations taking place? In other words, was it the complaints by the family, or was it a direction by the Minister? It was a combination of all those factors, in fact. There was information coming from the Minister, the family had come into GSOC as well. So my understanding now, it is quite a bit back, and I wasn't in the office at the time, Deputy, but my understanding is that those all came together from a number of different sources, and then GSOC brought them together as one cohesive investigation, which included the 56 allegations. So let me put it a different way. If the family alone had provided the information that they provided, would that have been sufficient for you to have conducted the investigation? An investigation had started on the basis of what the family had provided. Okay. So then, in terms of the two sort of strands, the criminal and the disciplinary, who would have conducted the investigations? There was a senior investigating officer in Longford conducted the investigations. Was that a Garda officer or a GSOC officer? I beg your pardon, it's GSOC. So it was and was that the case for both? Yeah, yes. Okay. So after it was completed, was it the same individual that they carried out both reports? It was the same team. Yes, it was the same team. Yes. Okay. So there were internal GSOC team of right. People. So the first report, the 101, I think that was 6 years after the original investigation started. Do you consider that to be in any way acceptable time frame? It's certainly a very long time frame, Deputy. There's no doubt about that. I'm afraid I haven't really. I wasn't there at the time, and to understand all the nuances, while I have read the background material, anticipating your question, and examined the file. There was, let's say, 56 separate allegations that all had to be dealt with criminally across a broad spectrum of activity that preceded the unfortunate, terrible accident and succeeded the incident as well, as you're perhaps aware. So that it was a broad nature. So, but I don't, just in terms of going forward, to answer the question, do you consider 6 years for an investigation of that type to be an acceptable length of time? I couldn't comment on all the nuances and the stymies or the opportunities that occurred during that time. So it was longer again than, sorry, Ms. Logan.
No, I was just going to say, just in terms of being fair, I'm giving you an answer on the standard, but maybe separate to the individual case that you're speaking about. The answer to the question of is 6 years acceptable is no. But he was talking specifically in relation. I'm not talking about that case. I'm just talking about a general standard for this commission. We wouldn't consider that acceptable.
So in terms of the disciplinary aspect of the case, that was even longer again, because it was subsequent to the completion of the criminal aspect of your investigation.
But it followed on in a relatively short period of time. I haven't got the exact time, but within a few months, it followed on from GSOC, I believe, to the Garda Commissioner.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Mr. Hume, the GSOC did recommend disciplinary action in respect of 3 Gardai following that investigation.
I believe that to be correct.
So are you aware then that in respect of 2 of those, the disciplinary procedures that were employed, or the penalties that were applied, were subsequently then withdrawn by the Garda Commissioner?
I'm aware there was some sort of court action, and the outworkings of that was the setting aside of those proceedings.
So after all of that time, in terms of the amount of work that GSOC has put in, are you satisfied that there was an appropriate outcome at the end of all your own efforts and the expenditure that was invested into this case?
I think it's really not what GSOC feel about the thing. I think there's far more important people in this investigation than GSOC's concerns in terms of the family themselves and their feeling of hurt. But clearly we work to try and deliver the best result and the fairest result for everyone. So, and you're right, I think, in terms of the family being a very important aspect, and the fact that they instigated, essentially, the investigation. Why then has the family not received the full copies of the reports that were published into this case?
Well, there is a subsequent inquiry going on, as you're aware, that's in the hands of retired Judge Houghton. So that's effectively a further hurdle that has appeared on this particular long road. So that I think that you'd have to address your query to Judge Houghton and his inquiry in that regard.
I have to say I don't buy that. GSOC commissioned the reports, carried out the investigations. GSOC published concluded 2 reports. In respect of the 101 report, the family have received summaries, not the full report, and my understanding is that the same is the case for the Section 97 report. So these are reports in your possession. Whatever Judge Houghton is doing in relation to his scoping inquiry, he needs to be let do that, but that doesn't, in my view, prevent GSOC from providing those reports to the family. In fact, the Garda Commissioner is on the record as saying that these reports have been compiled by GSOC and the publication relates to your organisation alone. So my question is, will you provide those reports to the family, considering they are the instigators? As Mr. Hume has rightly said, they're the most important part of this procedure. The experience, and I have to say this, and following this case and being aware of some of the details and most of the information, most of the revelations about the fact that the person who killed Shane should have been imprisoned at the time, had been in breach of multiple bail conditions, actually had received a custodial sentence that was never pursued, that he never actually served, that while he was supposed to be signing on a Garda station on a daily basis for a period of that time, he was actually in custody north of the border. It's a litany of failures, and the real answers and the causation of all of those failures has never been revealed. And GSOC, the organisation that one would have hoped would have been part of finding those answers, instead was subjugated to a huge delay, during which time every other actor in this process refused to answer questions. The Minister for Justice at the time, the Department of Justice, the Gardai, the DPP, the Court Service, everybody who was responsible for failures in this case, said for almost 8 years, we can't answer questions because GSOC are carrying out an investigation. Now GSOC are coming in here and saying we can't provide information because there's a scoping inquiry taking place. And my question is, when the scoping inquiry is concluded, what's going to be the excuse for refusing to provide this family with answers as to why their son was killed by a man that should have been imprisoned at the time?
Well, all I can tell you, Deputy, is that Judge Houghton made 114 requests for information from GSOC. GSOC in October last responded to these, and our legal unit is liaising with Judge Houghton at the moment. I'd like to be able to give you a more positive response than that.
Can I just ask, so is there a preclusion on you providing information to any other third party that has been provided to Judge Houghton? Is that the case, that the scope and inquiry has said that once you provide us with that information, you cannot then provide it to another person?
Well, I can't answer that for certain, Deputy. We're respecting the work that's been carried out by Judge Houghton. That's the only thing I can say to you at this stage.
So you can't assure us today that you will provide those reports to the family of Shane O'Farr?
I can't give you that assurance as of now.
Okay. Could I just on that, perhaps maybe, I know that you're maybe on the spot a bit with it, that you would come back maybe to the committee with maybe with a piece of correspondence around that.
Certainly.
That if it can or can't be, and if it can't be, why it can't be at this stage.
Yes.
That would be helpful.
I'd certainly give that undertaking.
Okay.
Justice.
Okay. Thank you.